Alright, what's going on, guys? It's going to be my stamina DK build. We're running 20 health, so we can get 30k max health, 44 stamina. We have 24.5k stamina with 1000 magic recovery, 1600 stamina recovery, 4400 weapon damage, 23% crit with 7k pen, and 1700 spell and physical resist with 1800 crit. Fully buffed up with the pot. We're going to be running 23k spell and physical, 5300 weapon damage, 23% weapon critical, 7100 pen with 2200 stamina recovery and 1300 mana recovery. We are also be running the serpent for a Mundus stone, along with smoke bear haunch for a food, and vampire stage 3 for the extra tankiness. For the race for this build, we are going to be running imperial as well to get that extra cost reduction, more max stats. Nord will work good here, but you probably will need a recovery glyph since you're going to have sustain problems. Or an Auric, you'll also need a recovery glyph if you're playing one of those for sure. On Imperial, if you're planning to do more open world, you might also need a recovery glyph. But for the general most part, we're just going to be running all infused. You only will need a recovery glyph if you're probably running open world with Imperial. Let's get into the sets. We're running Unleashed. This gives us weapon spell, max stam, max stam. When you deal direct damage with blink, charge, leap, teleport, or pull ability, you cut your enemy, cutting them to bleed for 10,000 bleed damage over 10 seconds, so it's about 1,000 damage every tick, and implying hemorrhage. What it does is reduce the target's max health by 10%, which is really strong in a set, since that just is cutting a lot of the survivability out right away. Very strong set. And then it's all going to be infused weapon damage. For our front bar, we're running Plague. This gives us another dot, dealing 8,000 disease damage over 10 seconds. And if they cleanse it early, it does 3,400 disease damage exploding, dealing 50% per enemy hit. So could run Savage Werewolf here instead, since it does do more overall damage than Plague Break. So I'll show you Savage. So Savage with my stats does about this much. So you can see it does about 30%, 40% more damage overall than Plague Break, but I don't like it. It's not as consistent. Plus, you can use Noxus Breath here and put Plague Break on a bunch of people, where you can't really do that with Werewolf. You have to auto attack them individually. So overall, I do like Plague Break more than Savage Werewolf, but this is another really good option if you want to run that instead. For our back bar, we're going to be running a Defending Greatsword Maelstrom. Gives us critical charge, causing them to bleed for 9,200 bleed damage over 7 seconds. That's pretty strong. It gives us another massive dot on top of Play Break, and on top of Unleash. We're running a very heavy dot setup, as you can see here. For our weapon, we're running Sharpen Nirnhone with weapon spell and shock. Sharpen Nirn. And our back bar is running a weapon damage glyph with defending. For our monster set here, we're running Magma Incinerate here. It gives us mag stam recovery. And when you heal yourself or a group member within 28 meters, you gain 215 weapon and spell damage and 3,000 armor for 10 seconds. This is really strong. It gives us a lot of extra survivability, and I think it's very strong. It's a good set to run. For our pieces, we're running heavy shoulders and helmet here. Double reinforced to get the maximum armor. Our chest, all waist, boots, and our arms are going to be in pen here. They're going to be medium as well. And then medium legs with well fitted, one well fitted. All prismatic glyphs as well on all our pieces. So let's get right into our skills now. For our skills, we're running Molten Whip, Flame Oblivion, Noxus Breath, Venomous Claws, Shattering Rocks, and Ferocious Leap. I think this is better than the other morphs, since you can get the damage shield, which can relieve a lot of pressure for a short period of time, since the ultimate cost is not super important and the extra damage is not a lot. In my opinion, for the extra damaging shield that you get, gives you a lot of extra survivability. Then we're running Coagulating Blood, Amazing Heal, Rally, our weapon buff, Vigor, I heal over a time, Critical Rush here to proc our Maelstrom, and then Volatile Armor. You could run the other morph for this. I just like the extra dot it gives you, but the other morph is definitely just as good. So it's personal preference in my opinion. Just choose whichever one you want. And then Corrosive Armor on our back bar. This setup, we're running about 8 dots in total. It's very strong. Yeah, so we have 1, 2, 3 here. These are all dots. Then our back bar here, Critical Rush proc's a dot. Volatile Armor is a dot as well. Maelstrom, Plague Break, and Unleash, these are all dots, which is very strong. We're not running any major expedition on this build. Since we're running 5 medium, I would recommend putting Elude here over Crit Rush, and then running a Bait Strand back bar and not Maelstrom. So you just switch this out for Bait Strand, put Elude here if you want to run something like that where you get major evasion and major expedition, and then run Escapist Potions on the back bar here, and then that will cover all your survivability in open world where you can get away from snares and all that good stuff. So if you want to run something like that, if you guys are planning to run the Bait Strand setup where you switch out your Maelstrom Perfect Greatsword here for a Bait Strand Greatsword, I would recommend also changing out Unleashed here for either Heartland Conquer. What that does is that gives you, doubles your enchantment on your weapon, so it would double Nirnhone here, it would double Sharpen, it would double Defending. I think that would be a very strong setup to have here as well if you want to run something like that. Or I think Deadly is another good set as well. So what Deadly does is Deadly increases all your damage over time and channel abilities by 15%. So this would increase all our dots by 15%, which is very strong as well. So if you are wanting to go Bait Strand here and put a loot on the back bar, that's what I would recommend doing. Is just either going Heartland Conquer or Deadly, or just another damage over time effect like Unleashed. If like Werewolf even would work as well. This is what I recommend if you do want to substitute out Maelstrom. That's what I would do if you wanted to substitute out Maelstrom Greatsword for a Bait Strand Greatsword. But there's really no flex skills for this setup. You basically have to run everything as is. You don't really have any room since we need Critical Rush to proc our Maelstrom. And the rest is all survivability and our damage, so I wouldn't really switch anything out. Alright, onto our CP. For our CP, running maximum damage, gotta make the enemies feel pain, running Thaumaturge, Deadly Aim, and Master at Arms. 3 damaging abilities here. Very strong, I'd recommend running all 3 of these. And then our third one will be Ironclad here to reduce damage taken from direct attacks. This is really strong since most of the time you're gonna get one shot by a burst and not something like that. You could run Resilience here as well if you want to substitute one of these other damaging ones out. And then you can run more Well Fitted on your armor since you'll have Resilience here. This gives you about 600 crit resist. So you can sub out some of your impen on your armor here for more Well Fitted if you want to do something like that. That's another option as well. For our red tree here, we're going to be running Pain, Refugees, Sustain for Suffering, Survival Instinct, and Fortify. This gives us armor, gives us 25% cost reduction when we have a status effect on us. It's a must-have. Best TP passive in the game, in my opinion. Sustained by Suffering gives us all 3 recoveries when we have a negative effect, which happens a lot in open world PvP and PvP in general. And then Pain Refuge gives us a 2% damage, reduced our damage taken by 2% for every negative effect on us, up to 20%. This is just massive. This can stack up pretty quickly, especially if multiple people have dots on you. You can definitely get a lot of damage reduction. I recommend getting all your passives once again as you see fit, because that's more just personal preference, but these are definitely the stars I would run. You could also run Harden and Juggernaut together or something like that. You can run Boundless Vitality if you want some more max health, but overall I think these are the 4 best stars to run in the red tree. In the green tree, it's all personal preference. You could run War Mount, Gifted Rider, Rationer, and Liquid Efficiency is what I would recommend. For green tree, it doesn't really matter too much. It doesn't. It's not too impactful in combat, so this comes more down to personal preference once again. So with this setup here, you always want to open with Critical Rush here since that will proc our Maelstrom on our back bar, and it'll also proc our weapon damage glyph, giving us more damage on our front bar. So a good way to do it is you just Critical Rush in, immediately proc Volatile so they get this debuff, switch bars, and then you just start dotting up your opponent as so. Generally by then you'll be taking some damage since we're not super tanky. You switch to your back bar, proc the heals again, and then you go for the you go for Shattering Rocks here to stun them, and you go for the Lit combo. If your opponents are really tanky and you're having trouble killing them, that's why we're running Corrosive. Use proc Corrosives when all your dots are on them. It gives you a lot of extra dot pressure, and you just melt through your opponent. It's a very heavy dot. It's a very heavy dot playstyle, so you're going to be kind of like a PvE rotation. You just want to make sure all your dots are out for most of the time. You just want to keep up the pressure constantly and whatnot. Make sure all your dots are up at 100%. So Critical Rush, Volatile, and then you want to Flames of Oblivion, Noxious Breath, Venomous Claw, and then by then Critical Rush generally will have worn off or be close, and Unleash will probably also be done proccing, and you want to re-crit rush. So we crit rush again and then go to the Shadow Rocks whip, because all your other docs should be still ticking and they'll be under a lot of pressure. Another combo is a leap into a whip, so you'd avoid the Shadow Rocks altogether and just leap whip. It also can get your opponents off guard while all the dots are ticking. You only generally want to go for your ult or your whip when all your dots are up and ticking at the same time, so it just hits like all at once, which is a massive amount of damage when you stack all these dots up together. Since, you know, you have like all these dots are hitting, if all these dots hit at the same time, it's just so much damage and they just evaporate from existence. And it's just very overall strong, a lot of pressure. The only downside to this build is we lack mobility, a great amount of survivability. That's why we're running Vampire to help with our survivability. Since we have no really good way to kite, but if you do want to kite, once again I recommend getting rid of the Maelstrom, putting Bait Strand here, and then going into our medium armor, putting a Lewd on our back bar, and then running Escape with potions on our Great Sword if you want to do something like that. Still a very strong build. You'll just have a little less dot damage, but you'll have a lot more survivability in the open world since you'll have ways to get away from snares and whatnot. Alright, and with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the build. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer anything down below. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed.